Welcome back to Hearts of Iron Abridged, where in the previous part, things went better than in the part before that. We got independence from the British Empire. We did lose Pakistan for a while, then we just invaded them to get it all back, so that's fine now. But we're still trying to work on a way for us to get to Europe. We took Honduras, not sure if that's useful, but we've got that now. I'm essentially waiting for something to go strangely wrong with Ireland so that we can take their territory or use them as a vassal or something in order to get into Europe. But some other developments are afoot. Just looking around at what's going on, the Axis seem to be doing quite well for themselves. We might still want to consider joining the Axis, although because we're our own faction right now, it will take some more work for us to be allowed to do that in the game. But you might have also seen back there was some kind of war going on between the Axis and an Eastern European faction that's essentially just Poland and Hungary. We'll come back to that in a sec. My Ireland plan is starting to go wrong because they're just getting invaded right now. It's Spain has come up and they're just going to take Ireland. Looks like they're being pretty successful, and in a war of attrition I'm sure Spain can beat Ireland down if they really want to. So that's a shame. I've still got my backup plan, and that is Portugal. They are not in a faction and they're gradually becoming communist. Ireland though is going to be off the table, at least while we're not in the Axis. But things develop quite quickly. While I was sitting around wondering what to do, the Republic of China joined the Leftcom gang. They were at war with Burma. They asked me to join the war and I said yes, and I was also already justifying my own war against Burma just to have something to do. This sped up the process. But the real twist is that Burma joined the Poland-Hungary faction in Europe. So now we're at war with Poland and Hungary for some reason. And this is actually perfect, because we needed an excuse to invade somebody in Europe, plus a way to get there. The way to get there isn't really there right now. We don't have military access, so we can't go over there to any of the factions bordering Poland or Hungary. Plus, for now, we want to just bring down Burma because they're right here. I'd already set up my troops to do the invasion because I was just going to do it unilaterally anyway. And here we go. They did actually have some troops and we don't have that much, plus we're immediately out of supplies. The old classic, still got approaching 2 million troops to deploy, and it's already too much what we have here. The infrastructure is probably very poor, which is going to be affecting that. The war does stalemate a little bit actually, but we now have some classic Hearts of Iron 4 micro, where if you just zoom in and look at the line, there'll be random places that are sometimes not guarded at all or are very lightly guarded. So you can just make very small pushes here and there and keep doing it over and over again to gradually move the line. Was planning this naval invasion that I won't be able to do because I still don't have any ships, and as long as there's like one enemy convoy somewhere in between us and the destination, we're not considered to have naval supremacy, so we can't even try it. Here's what we do achieve though. I conquer this line that cuts off the enemy capital from the rest of their territory, once again trying to do some kind of supplies exploit plan. Not really sure if it worked, but in this case we didn't need to do much more. We conquered a couple more territories. We didn't even get their capital in the end. But Burma appears to drop out of the war because Poland capitulates. This ends the war and brings us to the peace treaty stage. So essentially the Axis won that war for us and Burma just went down with the faction they randomly joined for no particular reason. And now we are going to cash in. We are going to be able to take all of Burma for sure with the points we're likely to gain. If we can gain like 10,000 more points, we can take a whole bunch of other stuff. Cut now to sometime later when we have a whole bunch of other stuff. It's some more peace treaty shenanigans. I think only like 2 regions were taken by somebody else. So we've now got a whole load of random stuff in Europe. This is perfect. We've got large parts of Poland. We've also created Hungary, Ukraine, and I think Belarus maybe as well as puppet nations. Not too useful to us, but that was just for fun. What we really want is the Polish territory that is next to the sea. We now have a couple of naval bases that are somewhat close to the United Kingdom. Now there are only like 3 or 4 naval regions between those naval bases in the Baltic Sea and parts of the United Kingdom, meaning with just a few ships we might be able to get naval supremacy for like 2 seconds, giving me a chance to launch a naval invasion, and then we'll see how things go. So immediately we start deploying our troops to the docks. We are going to send a whole load of guys over to Europe to try and do something. Of course, to be able to do anything we will need to get some ships over there as well, and this is where my battle with the naval user interface comes back to the fore. Eventually I worked out how to get a group of destroyers to go over to our new base, which is surprisingly difficult. Then I can order them to patrol in the various sea regions to make it so we technically have naval superiority. We only have like 6 destroyers in total. I think I had my 1 dockyard making destroyers since the beginning of the game. So this is about as good as our navy gets without a load more civilian factories to make more dockyards, which of course takes time. Because we are now essentially going to be attacking the Allies, there are other preparations we need to make. We need to be ready to strike them on our own borders. We have 2 borders with Allied powers. One of them is just the port down in the bottom right. And there's also an Allied nation over here next to our Central American base. Luckily, most of the nations here are neutral, so we only need to take down Guatemala and probably the British part of Belize as well. That should be easy with the forces I have stationed there, so that's something. But now we're going to run into an enormous bit of trouble with further intense battling against the naval UI, which I think maybe isn't that complicated, but I'm just so convinced that it's complicated that any minor discovery I feel like I've made, I then second guess, thinking no, surely it couldn't be working like that. So I don't know what's going on. What I was trying to do is get a ship to go into each naval region to get that supremacy. I eventually worked out how to get a ship into 2 of the 4 naval regions, and I could order them to go into the 3rd, but they wouldn't do it for reasons I couldn't work out for a long time. But I'm going to cut to the chase. The ships we have don't have enough operational range to secure naval supremacy over towards the United Kingdom. That means this plan will not work, ever. I need to make better ships, I suppose. We only have the level 1 destroyer, no ship techs, barely any ability to make more ships, and there's no system in the game for buying ships or anything like that. Meaning, that's the end of the campaign. Challenge failed. It actually isn't possible for us to attack the United Kingdom, even if we could get into a war with them. Unless, I thought there's one more possible way. We just need bases that are closer. All of those bases are controlled by the Axis. We have to actually join World War II and win it for the Allied side in such a way that we end up in a position to strike the Allies in World War III. So it's a more long-term plan now. And here I am setting up on our very convenient border with Germany. We will be able to make almost a surprise attack from our interior position inside their empire. We also need to adjust our forces back in Asia, because there is a major Axis faction over here. I say major, minor faction in the game, but a big bit of territory with a load of troops in it to fight. And there's also the black horse of this campaign. It's Bulgaria, who are currently absolutely annihilating the USSR. They're also in the Axis, so presumably the German army is over there, allowing them to massively expand their borders. That means time is running out. The Axis is only going to be getting more powerful. My way of actually joining the war with the Axis was to declare war on the Qinghai Republic right here in Asia. What I thought is that because I can very quickly justify a war over here to just take one tiny bit of territory, I'll enter a war against somebody who's in the Axis. They will then call in Germany, and then I'll use that to invade Germany. A whole bunch of stuff does happen after we start this war. What noticeably doesn't happen is my troops aren't attacking. I can't remember why, and I couldn't work out why at the time, but our invasion didn't actually pop off right away. Eventually they started attacking, and I was also confused about why nothing was happening over here, because I figured that by declaring war on part of the Axis, I would automatically be able to invade these other parts as well. We are enemies with them. Their divisions are showing up red there, but we're not attacking, and this actually ends up being a big deal, because not making a simultaneous attack gave the enemy a chance to position loads of armies on those borders. We were in a position to absolutely rampage forward and just claim loads of territory for free as the war started. But now there's this big delay. The enemy have worked out that a war's about to start. Eventually it does kick in as some diplomacy happens in the background. So we do start making our invasion, but now the situation is suboptimal. We don't actually have that many troops due to our lack of production capability, and the Axis as a whole is now a pretty big faction, so they can contest us on that new Greater Bulgarian border. We'll be able to make advances in a few spots, but broadly speaking, that's going to be a difficult line. Not that we actually need to be pushing too much in that direction. My main goal was to occupy Germany, try and knock them out of the war and progress towards some sort of peace. And in the west things are better because a lot of the German territories still aren't garrisoned, meaning we immediately advanced the front line up. But this situation didn't last very long actually. I only advanced a few tiles before the enemy started spamming things in to stop me. And it was partially because a lot of my line is nothing as well. We don't have enough troops to man this very long front line. So again, we're being very much hampered by our production capabilities. We have tons of people we could deploy, but no weapons. Right now, I'm actually not really producing many weapons for a reason I'll highlight in a moment, a mistake I made along the way here. But yes, this is a very big front line with that massive bulbous section towards the bottom into Hungary. So not very convenient for us. There's another huge issue though that's going to absolutely ruin this plan. While things were going okay for a while, some Axis naval forces went and blockaded the supply route to this area. And I finally noticed when I realized I was out of supply, I was like, I don't have that many troops, how can I be out of supply? Well, we don't even have a supply line going back to our capital, and because of the game's supply line magic, we're screwed because of that. There's no way to get supplies locally. Well, you can get a tiny amount of supplies, you can't form a new base of supply, essentially. So all of those troops will continually be losing their organization, and we will eventually die. Thus, might as well not waste too much time here. Here's about half an hour in the future. Things are looking worse as we get gradually crushed by not all that much Axis stuff. We just couldn't fight against it. I kept downsizing the armies and closing our front lines together to have more and more troops defending smaller areas, but it's no good. We can't get any organization. We can't even leave because we're blockaded here. There's no sea route to go back to India, meaning that while I can try and cluster around the ports, that's not actually going to help me in any way. I think my best hope would have been to try and somehow push to the south and find another port to exit through. Instead, we gradually lose, and with it, the dream of the reverse Raj dies as well. Now we're even further away, although it was a so close yet so far situation in that it didn't really matter if we controlled Poland because that's not enough to invade the UK. So not controlling it isn't that much of a setback, technically, looking at the bright side of things. I disbanded those armies and didn't lose quite as much manpower as I would have if they were captured, so that's something. And back at home, we're actually being invaded by the Axis as well. The Republic of China came in and sorted this out for me, so it wasn't that bad. But by this point, we're in a bit of a dodgy situation. You might have noted there we have something like minus 50 steel, which prevents us from producing virtually anything. And that is because I lost all of my convoys, and because I spent the whole game making those 6 destroyers, I didn't really have many convoys. That prevented me from trading internationally, which destroyed my economy, and it's all gone terribly wrong. The Axis appear to be taking over the world, the Comintern is going downtown. I don't think it's a completely unsalvageable situation, but we're not here to try and defeat the Axis or allow the left opposition to bloom. We're here to invade the United Kingdom, and we are nowhere near being able to do that right now. So I kind of lost all my morale. But all of this fighting against the Axis did make me realize something. I thought, well, in order to do this plan, we just have to control a bit of Western Germany. So why don't we just declare war on the Axis in the beginning? Which made me realize there is another way to do this campaign. It's to just go down the straight and narrow. be in the Allies at the start and try to win World War II real fast with an early intervention, get us set up for a World War III invasion of the United Kingdom with ports in Germany, and maybe do some political shenanigans to get ourselves out of the Allies and into the Comintern or something, to give us the strength to actually follow through with that war. That's the plan. Cut to me starting the campaign again. We're going to try this new strategy. Scoping out the port I need there, only 2 naval regions between that one and our target, so if we can somehow get Western Germany out of this campaign, then we'll be in a better position than last time. Maybe. We are also going to take the gamble of going down the Indian National Congress focus route. So no communism this time. This is going to be a wild ride. We'll probably want to try and become communist or fascist later, but for now, we're going to go down the straight and narrow. We're going down the Gandhi path. Basically, we just want independence, but we'll still be in the Allies and generally work with them if we can. We again have to deal with the princes of India, but it's easier than with the communist route. We just have to make concessions, which are things like giving up some political power points or having your factories not work for a small amount of time. You're making them stuff, I guess. That's easy enough, and crucially, you don't lose military equipment and stability, which is the way you have to do it with the communist route, leading to overall a better looking situation with regard to the princes. We also have a better situation with the independence movement, because I won the election by a much bigger margin than in my previous playthroughs. I was finally able to keep Pakistan when we go independent, so that's great. Now we don't have to invade them and we'll be using their factories all along. This will boost up our economy big time in the long run. So we're already at the independence moment. I'm really skipping over the beginning of this campaign since we've seen it before already in this series. Europe's looking intact, nothing too unusual happening. I wanted to join the Allies right now, but we're going to again run into a game rule that prevents us from doing what we want here. There has to be 80% world tension for us to join a faction. That means we're not going to be able to join the Allies. We'll just have to sit on our own until things get really bad in Europe. Then they'll let us join and give us that free war declaration so we can intervene easily. In the meantime, we can do some other stuff. We first integrate all of those princely states. It goes through this process where it goes down a list of states and they all have a percentage chance of joining you or rebelling. But because I gave them so many concessions earlier, the chance of them joining is 100% in every case. Here I was confused about why we still had the princely states debuff on our nation, but it just has to go through the entire list. And another upside to this is every time somebody joins you, they give you a free civilian factory along with some other stuff, and our focus tree route also gives us a bunch of free factories. I think easily as many as the communist route gives you. It doesn't give you as many bonuses to your production, so maybe in the long term this is worse. But we're going to have more factories early on, and that's going to allow us to make more factories early on. So now we can at full speed produce military factories, and we're still getting more civilian factories joining, meaning we'll be making a second building at the same time as our main building project. We've only got a few military factories right now, but we've got some time to waste also, so we're going to build up, get all of the basic military techs, make an army, and look for that excuse to go in and take down Germany as early and quickly as possible to claim our place beside our former overlords with no hostile intent at all, of course. That's what we'll be doing in the next part, so join me next time to see if my third attempt at finding even a potentially viable reverse Raj strategy will pay off. वतन की राह में वतन के नौजवान शहीद हो